Imagine this. You wake up tired, not just physically tired, financially tired. Your alarm goes off, your phone lights up with notifications, and before your feet even touch the floor, your mind is already doing math. Bills, rent, groceries, that credit card balance you promised yourself you deal with last month. The quiet anxiety that never really leaves. Now here's the disturbing part. You're probably working harder than your parents did. Longer hours, more emails, more stress, more side hustles, more productivity apps, more grind. Yet somehow you feel poorer. Not necessarily in income, but in control, in time, in peace. You were told that if you studied, stayed disciplined, avoided stupid mistakes, and worked hard, things would eventually stabilize. That security would arrive. That money problems would fade. But look around. People are exhausted. Debt is normal. Anxiety is everywhere. Paychecks disappear the same week they arrive. Even people making good money feel trapped inside invisible walls. So let me ask you something uncomfortable. If hard work creates wealth, why are so many hardworking people barely surviving? If education guarantees stability, why do millions of educated adults live paycheck to paycheck? If saving is the answer, why does inflation quietly erase everything you save? And here's the most dangerous question of all. What if you've been playing the money game correctly, but it's the game itself that's broken? Pause for a second. Let that sit. Because this isn't about laziness. It's not about motivation. It's not even about intelligence. It's about how you think. Rich people don't think like you. Not because they're smarter. Not because they're morally superior. But because they were conditioned differently. And because they learned to see systems instead of symptoms. Right now, you're likely focused on income, on budgeting, on cutting expenses, on finding a raise, on surviving the month. They focus on leverage, ownership, asymmetry, optionality, time. You worry about losing money. They worry about losing opportunity. You try to protect what little you have. They design their lives around growth. And here's the brutal paradox. The behaviors that feel responsible when you're poor often keep you poor. Playing it safe, avoiding risk, staying comfortable, waiting for certainty, holding cash, chasing stability. Those instincts feel logical, they feel adult, they feel mature. But they quietly lock you into a loop. A loop where your time is exchanged for money. Where your lifestyle expands with your income. Where your savings are eaten by inflation. Where your energy is drained by work that doesn't compound. A loop where you're always busy, always stressed, always planning for a future that never quite arrives. Maybe you recognize this. You tell yourself, once I make a little more, things will calm down. But they don't. You upgrade your apartment, your car payment grows, subscriptions multiply, expectations rise. Suddenly, your higher salary feels exactly like your old one, just with nicer packaging. Lifestyle creep doesn't announce itself. It sneaks in quietly. And nobody teaches you how dangerous it is. You're also taught to avoid risk. To be careful, to choose the safe job, to keep your head down, to follow the path. But what if the biggest risk isn't taking chances? What if the biggest risk is staying exactly where you are while the world changes around you? Think about it. Automation is accelerating. AI is reshaping work. Companies restructure without warning. Entire industries disappear. Yet millions of people still believe their job is their safety net. You're told to build a resume. Rich thinkers build assets. You're taught to ask for raises. They design systems. You're encouraged to save money. They focus on acquiring things that grow. And before you scroll past this thinking, yeah, but I don't have capital, understand this. They didn't start with capital either. They started with perspective, with mental models, with an understanding of how money actually flows. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Most people don't fail financially because they make one massive mistake. They fail slowly. They fail through small, reasonable decisions repeated over decades. They fail by choosing comfort over growth. They fail by optimizing for short-term relief instead of long-term leverage. They fail by copying the visible lifestyles of wealthy people instead of their invisible habits. Vacations, cars, clothes, restaurants. That's what you see. You don't see the years of delayed gratification, the reinvestment, the uncomfortable risks, the obsession with ownership, the patience. And social media makes it worse. You're constantly exposed to curated success while living inside your private struggles. That comparison quietly poisons your sense of progress. It makes you feel behind even when you're moving forward. If any of this is hitting close to home, pause and breathe. You're not broken. You're conditioned. Conditioned to trade time for money. Conditioned to chase status. Conditioned to fear risk. Conditioned to confuse consumption with success. And here where things get serious. If you don't change how you think about money, no amount of budgeting will save you. If you don't understand incentives, systems, and compounding, you'll keep running in place. If you don't learn to separate income from wealth, you'll always feel one crisis away from collapse. So let me ask you directly, and I'd love for you to actually reflect on this in the comments. Do you want comfort or do you want control? Do you want stability today or freedom tomorrow? Do you want to look rich or actually be free? Because you can't optimize for all of them at once. And that choice, whether you realize it or not, is already shaping your future. If this resonates, take a second to like this and stay connected. Not for algorithms, for yourself. Because what comes next might quietly change how you see money forever. Now let's talk about the hidden system behind all of this. The incentives, the psychology, the economic machinery that keeps smart, hardworking people stuck. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Why smart people stay stuck? Let's pull back the curtain. Not in a conspiracy theory way, in a systems way. Because once you understand the structure, your personal struggles start to make sense. You live inside an economy designed around incentives. And incentives quietly shape behavior more powerfully than motivation ever could. Adam Smith talked about this centuries ago. He observed that people don't act based on morality alone. They respond to rewards and penalties embedded in markets. You don't wake up wanting to serve capitalism. You wake up wanting to pay rent. So you follow the signals placed in front of you. Go to school. Get credentials. Find a stable job. Spend what's left to feel human again. The system doesn't need to trap you with force. It traps you with comfort and routine. Karl Marx noticed something darker. He warned that when people sell their labor to survive, they slowly become disconnected from the value they create. You produce, but you don't own. You work, but you don't compound. You give away your energy and receive wages while the upside flows elsewhere. That's not ideology, that's accounting. Most modern workers don't participate in ownership. They participate in income. And income is fragile. Ray Dalio explains this through debt cycles. Economies expand when people borrow. They contract when debt becomes too heavy. Governments print. Inflation rises. Purchasing power falls. Your paycheck stays roughly the same while everything around you gets more expensive. That's not bad luck. That's the design of debt-based systems. Inflation is the silent tax no one votes on. It slowly erodes your savings while rewarding those who own assets. If you hold cash, you lose. If you hold productive assets, you survive. And yet nobody teaches you this in school. Instead, you're taught to save. You're taught to be careful. You're taught to avoid mistakes. But Nassim Taleb would tell you that life doesn't reward caution, it rewards antifragility. Systems grow stronger through stress. People grow stronger through exposure to controlled risk. Avoiding volatility doesn't make you safe, it makes you brittle. Meanwhile, you're encouraged to seek stability in a world that is structurally unstable. Think about that. You're trying to build certainty inside a system built on uncertainty. No wonder you feel anxious. Now layer psychology on top. Your brain evolved for survival, not investing. Loss aversion makes losses feel twice as painful as gains feel pleasurable. So you cling to money even when holding it guarantees slow decay. Herd mentality tells you to copy what everyone else is doing, even when everyone else is drowning. Short-term thinking makes immediate comfort feel more important than future freedom. These biases aren't weaknesses. They're ancient wiring. But in modern financial systems, they become liabilities. So you choose the safe job. You avoid uncomfortable risks. You upgrade your lifestyle as soon as your income rises. You postpone investing because it feels scary. You delay learning because you're tired. And slowly, quietly, years pass. This is how financial lives are lost. Not through dramatic collapse, through gentle drift. Naval Ravikant puts it simply, wealth is not money. Wealth is owning things that earn while you sleep. But look at your life. Does anything earn while you rest? Or does everything depend on your presence? That's the difference. Most people live inside linear systems. Hours in, money out. Stop working, income stops. Wealthy thinkers obsess over nonlinear outcomes. Code that scales, content that compounds, businesses that grow without constant input, investments that appreciate. They don't ask, how much does this pay? They ask, does this scale without me? You're also caught in status traps. You buy things to signal success to people who are just as stressed as you are. Cars become identities, apartments become achievements, clothes become confidence. But status is expensive, and it doesn't compound. Every dollar spent trying to look successful is a dollar not working for your future. Lifestyle creep turns raises into illusions. Debt turns tomorrow into collateral. And the middle class quietly becomes a pressure chamber squeezed from both sides, rising costs above, stagnant wages below. Now here, where it gets uncomfortable. The system doesn't collapse because people are ignorant. It survives because they are. Financial ignorance isn't accidental, it's structural. When people don't understand money, they depend on institutions. They stay compliant. They remain predictable. You're never taught how banks create money. You're never taught how inflation really works. You're never taught how compounding favors ownership. You're taught how to be employable. That's it. So you grow up believing wealth is about earning more. But earning more without changing behavior just makes you a higher paid participant in the same loop. More income, more spending, more stress. Same trap, nicer cage. Meanwhile, investors and entrepreneurs think in probabilities, not guarantees. They expect failures. They build margin of safety. They place small bets with large upside. They don't seek certainty. They seek asymmetric opportunity. They understand that most ventures fail, but a few successes can outweigh dozens of losses. That's Taleb again. They don't ask, what if this doesn't work? They ask, what if it does? And they structure their lives to survive the downside. Here's a historical pattern you should notice. Every major wealth shift came from ownership during periods of change. Industrialization rewarded factory owners.
The internet rewarded platform builders. The digital age rewards creators, coders, and capital allocators. The employees benefited too, but disproportionately less. This isn't evil. It's how leverage works. So let's redefine some words. Wealth is optionality. Freedom is time control. Security is diversified income. Stability is adaptability. And control begins in the mind. Right now, your greatest financial asset isn't your job. It's your ability to learn, adapt, and see systems. Because once you understand how incentives shape behavior, Once you recognize how debt, inflation, and status quietly extract your future, once you realize that safety is often an illusion, you start to feel something shift. A quiet urgency. Not panic. Clarity. You begin to see that staying comfortable is expensive. That waiting is a decision. That nobody is coming to rescue your financial future. And in that realization, something inside you wakes up. How wealthy think differently, and how you start today. So where does that leave you? Not inspired. Not overwhelmed. Aware. Because awareness is where everything changes. Up until now, money has probably felt like something happening to you. Bills arrive. Prices rise. Your job demands more. Your energy fades. You react. You adjust. You cope. That's survival mode. But wealthy thinkers don't live in reaction. They live in design. They don't ask, how do I make more money? They ask, how do I stop being dependent on one fragile source? They don't ask, how do I save harder? They ask, how do I own things that grow? They don't ask, what's safe? They ask, what gives me upside with limited downside? That difference sounds subtle. It's everything. Right now, your financial life is probably built around effort. More hours, more tasks, more responsibility. But effort doesn't scale. Leverage does. Leverage is when your work continues without you. It can be capital. It can be code. It can be content. It can be a small business. It can be ownership in companies. It can be a skill that travels with you. Naval Ravikant calls this permissionless leverage, ways to create value without asking someone for approval every time you want to earn. And here's the part most people miss. You don't need to quit your job tomorrow. You don't need a risky startup. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to stop living like your paycheck is your plan. Let's make this real.
Not motivational. Practical. Right now, your life probably runs on one engine, your salary. If that engine stalls, everything shakes. Rent, food, dignity, peace. That's not security. That's dependency. Wealthy thinkers build multiple engines, slowly and quietly. They start embarrassingly small. They invest before they feel ready. They learn skills before they need them. They plant seeds years before shade appears. You've been taught to wait until things feel stable. They move while things are uncertain. Because uncertainty is where opportunity hides. Now let's talk about risk, the word that probably makes your stomach tighten. You've been trained to see risk as danger. They see risk as exposure. They don't gamble their lives on one big move. They take small, survivable bets. They protect the downside and leave room for upside. Taleb would call this barbell thinking. Most of your energy goes into staying safe, paying bills, staying employed, maintaining stability. A small portion goes into asymmetric experiments, things that could meaningfully change your trajectory if they work. And if they do, you're still alive, still employed, still learning. That's anti-fragility. You don't need certainty. You need resilience plus optionality. Now let's bring this down to earth. Here are 3 things you can actually do starting this week. Not someday. Not when life slows down. This week. 1 track where your freedom is leaking. Not your budget. Your freedom. For the next 7 days, write down every dollar you spend. Then ask 1 question. Did this move me closer to ownership or deeper into consumption? That's it. No judgment. Just awareness. You'll start seeing patterns you can't unsee. Coffee that adds up. Subscriptions you forgot about. Impulse purchases driven by stress. This isn't about becoming cheap. It's about becoming intentional. 2. Build 1 portable skill. not 10. 1. Something that increases your leverage. Writing, sales, design, coding, video, marketing, analytics. Pick the one that feels slightly uncomfortable but interesting. Spend 30 minutes a day learning it. That's it. Not 3 hours. Not perfection. 30 minutes. Skills are assets that inflation can't erase. They travel with you. They stack. They compound. Your job might disappear. Your skill won't. 3. Start ownership, even if it feels insignificant. Open an investment account. Buy a tiny amount of an index fund. Purchase one share. Start with $50. Start with $20. The amount doesn't matter. The identity shift does. You stop being only a worker. You become an owner. That psychological change is powerful. You begin to see the world differently. You pay attention to businesses. You understand cycles. You feel connected to growth instead of trapped in expenses. If this feels intimidating, say it out loud in the comments. You're not alone, and talking about it breaks its power. Now let me tell you something quietly important. You don't need to become rich to feel free. You need margin. Margin in time. Margin in money. Margin in choices. Even a few months of expenses saved changes how you breathe. Even a small investment changes how you think. Even one side project changes how you see yourself. Wealth doesn't arrive as a dramatic moment. It arrives as a series of invisible decisions. You won't wake up one day transformed. You'll look back and realize you stopped reacting and started designing. And that's when the anxiety softens. That's when work feels different. That's when money stops feeling like a constant threat. If this is resonating, stay close to this channel. Like it. Subscribe. Not because you need more content, but because you're building a new mental environment. And environments shape behavior. Remember this. You were taught to survive, not to compound. You were taught to be employable, not to be sovereign. But it's not too late to learn. And once you do, you don't just earn differently. You live differently. How people actually break free. Here's the part nobody glamorizes. There is no dramatic escape. No cinematic moment where chains fall off and confetti rains from the sky. Most people who change their financial lives do it quietly, slowly, almost invisibly. They don't announce it on social media. They don't suddenly look rich. They don't become motivational speakers overnight. They just start making different decisions while everyone else keeps repeating the same ones. And that's what makes it lonely. Because when you begin thinking differently about money, you also begin living differently. You stop joining every expensive outing. You stop upgrading things that still work. You stop chasing validation through purchases. You start saying no more often. You start choosing boring consistency over exciting consumption. From the outside, it looks like you're falling behind. From the inside, something powerful is happening. You're building margin. This is where most people quit. Not because it's hard financially, but because it's hard socially. Your friends might not understand why you're suddenly careful. Your family might question why you're investing instead of enjoying life. Coworkers might think you're strange for learning skills after work instead of numbing out. And a part of you will wonder the same. Am I being too extreme? Am I overthinking this? Shouldn't I just enjoy life like everyone else? That voice is normal. That voice is conditioning. Because the system rewards conformity. It rewards predictability. It rewards people who stay inside the lanes. But wealth, real wealth, is built by people willing to look unreasonable for a while. Let me say that again. Every meaningful financial transformation requires a season of being misunderstood. You start reading instead of scrolling. You invest when others spend. You build when others rest. You think in years while others think in weekends. Not forever, just long enough. And slowly something shifts. Your emergency fund grows. Your skills sharpen. Your confidence rises. Your dependence on one paycheck weakens. You begin to feel less afraid of unexpected expenses, less desperate for raises, less emotionally attached to your job. That's when money starts losing its power over you. Not because you have millions, but because you have options. This is what freedom actually feels like. Not yachts, not mansions, not Instagram success. Freedom feels like walking away from toxic work. Freedom feels like saying no without panic. Freedom feels like taking a few months off if you need to. Freedom feels like sleeping at night. And here's the strange part. Once you experience even a small taste of that freedom, you stop wanting most of the things you thought you wanted. Status loses its grip. Comparison fades. You stop caring about looking rich. You care about staying independent. This is the quiet exit. Not escaping society. Escaping dependency. You still participate in the world. You still work. You still pay taxes. But you're no longer psychologically owned by the system. You see it. You understand it. And that changes how you move. Now let's be honest. This path isn't fast. It doesn't reward impatience. It doesn't promise certainty. You will make mistakes. You will doubt yourself. You will sometimes feel like you're making no progress at all. But hear what keeps people going. They stop measuring success by months. They measure it by direction. Are you more skilled than last year? Are you less dependent than last year? Do you have more margin than last year? Do you think more clearly than last year? That's progress. And it compounds. One more thing before we end. If you're still here reading this, that already tells me something about you. You're not asleep. You're not numb. You feel that quiet pressure in your chest that says, there has to be more than this. That feeling matters. Most people ignore it. They drown it in distractions. You didn't. So take a moment and ask yourself honestly, what would my life look like if I stopped optimizing for comfort and started optimizing for control? What would change if I treated learning like a job? If I treated ownership like a responsibility? If I treated my future like something I'm actively building instead of hopping for? Write one answer down. Just one. And if you feel brave, share it in the comments. Saying it out loud makes it real. Stay connected, like this. Subscribe, not because you need another channel, but because you're building a new way of thinking, and thinking is where everything begins. Remember, you were taught how to survive. Now you're learning how to compound. You were taught to follow paths. Now you're learning how to design them. Rich people don't think like you, but you don't have to stay that way. And the moment you truly understand that is the moment your life starts to quietly change. For more communication, like and subscribe and leave me a comment. Thank you for watching.